welcome to The Olive Tree with me, Julia Fisher, where we introduce you to believers in Jesus living and working in Israel today, Jewish and Arab people. Julia Pascoe is a missionary with Jews for Jesus. She was born and brought up in London and was enjoying a good job there when she met a Christian and eventually became persuaded that Jesus was indeed the Jewish Messiah. At that point, her life changed forever, and she decided to give up her job, much to her family's concern, and join the international missionary movement Jews for Jesus. In this, the final part of her story, I asked Julia to step back and look at the global picture of what God is doing amongst Jewish communities scattered in various nations around the world.
Well, my impression of what God is doing is he's equipping us. Firstly, he's equipping us to know how to better reach Jewish people of all different age groups and different backgrounds. We have a very exciting team within Jews for Jesus who are now reaching out to the Haredi Jewish communities, the ultra-Orthodox. And we're seeing some incredible fruit from that. So God is working through ultra-Orthodox communities. He's working through young Jewish students. We have globally, we have a team in LA and a team in New York who have been able to find venues where we're serving. We have baristas and we have art galleries and music nights, and this is attracting young Jewish people. And he's expanding our student ministry globally as well. So we're seeing God open up opportunities for us, blessing us with resources to be able to carry on doing the work. And we're seeing more and more Jewish people who are now more curious. We have the opportunity to slowly relationship build, just get to know people rather than diving straight in with the message of the gospel, but getting to know people and then having that opportunity to present the gospel. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to sum up, but God has he's really expanded our territory, if you like, and really given us so much more resource.
And the world is such a different place now as well. You mentioned the pandemic and there's so much uncertainty. Do you think that this is having the effect of making people softer and more inquiring? And let's be honest, you don't just work amongst Jewish people. You draw a lot of Gentile people in as well, don't you? It's amazing just how wide your sweep is.
Yes. I think the pandemic, I think for many people, it's changed our thinking, hasn't it? I think if you speak to most people, it's had a big impact on most. But I think what the pandemic really did is it forced people into online communication, whether it be social media platforms or, and as I said, for us, it was our live chat, our chat room. So I think that pandemic, we can thank God for the way it brought people into, our chat rooms. Yeah.
And when you talk to people like this, as you say, it's very private and you can actually take them into a very deep conversation. And always the emphasis is on the Bible and explaining what the Bible is saying, particularly the New Testament. When Jewish people have their eyes opened and they read the scriptures afresh, what is their understanding of their calling as a Jewish person in God's plan for the salvation of the nations? Do you talk about that very often?
Yes, and that can take quite a long time before one understands God's calling, because I know for myself, when I came to salvation, I was overjoyed that I had God's salvation. I didn't understand the need to make Jesus the Lord of my life. That came a bit more slowly. But once I realized that Jesus was my Lord, and once I realized that he had a purpose for my life, I was then exploring what that purpose was. And it took a long time. As I shared earlier, it took time. And it also can take a Jewish person a long time to embrace their new identity in Messiah because of, the different backgrounds that we come from. But most of us have had it ingrained that, Jesus isn't for us. So when we come to faith in him, embracing our new identity in Messiah is another element. And Jews for Jesus, we're committed to discipling new Jewish believers and helping them to explore their new identity in Jesus. And then things unfold from there.
And is there that sense, do you carry that sense that there is a particular calling on you because you are Jewish? That you do have a unique role biblically?
Yeah, speaking for myself, Julia, I would say that I came to understand, and this is really, I guess, one of the deep reasons that I did say yes to this ministry, to being full-time, was that I understood I'm Jewish. I always knew that. And I understood that God was merciful and he saved me. And I understood as well that, there's less than 1% of Jewish people in the world that know Jesus. There's, and that as a Jewish believer in Jesus, for me personally, it was crucial that, I dedicate my time to sharing my faith with my Jewish people. And of course we could look at the biblical principle of God's calling on the Jewish people. We don't have time for that now, but I initially I understood that much. I'm Jewish, I've been saved, and I need to share this good news with my Jewish people and everyone else that will listen.
Well, the story of the Bible is very much about Israel and the Jewish people, Julia. So we have to, it's important for Christians to understand that, isn't it? That we're not, that there is this particular calling and God has a particular plan. So when you look at Israel and a lot of Christian interest in what's going on in Israel, as a Jewish missionary, if I can call you that, working in England, and as other Jewish missionaries are working around the world outside of Israel, how do you reconcile such a great interest amongst Christians in what God is doing in Israel, rather than the Jewish people as a whole?
Again, I think this is conversations that we have on a one-to-one basis with Christians. One of the joyful parts of our ministry is we share talks in different churches. We give presentations on the biblical feasts of Israel, and we get to meet many Christians, Gentile Christians, and you might find one or two within a church who really understand the need to share Jesus with Jewish people. But of course, many have this love for Israel and all things to do with Israel. And so it's a one-to-one conversation, one person at a time, where you get an opportunity to talk about the real priority, which is bringing the gospel to Jewish people. So I never try to, convince anybody or never try to, drive a point. I just get into gentle conversations, and that's where it starts from. And I have seen many Christian friends who, over time, have begun to understand that that's really the heart of the matter is bringing the gospel to Jewish people. And we're so blessed, Julia. We have an incredible community of Christians who partner with Jews for Jesus. It's our Christian brothers and sisters, the body of Messiah, who stand with us, support us, pray for us, and their partnership is what really, keeps us going. So I'm very encouraged that there are many, many Christians who do understand it's more than just loving all things Israel. It's really loving Jewish people enough to share the gospel with them.
You mentioned earlier that you have some Israeli believers who have joined your team in London. They've come from Jerusalem, I gather. Just a word about how they're fitting in and what they're doing.
Yeah, we're blessed. They've been with us for a couple of years now, and they've slowly been getting to know the Israeli Jewish community in North London. And they're a team of 3, and we're confident that team will grow. And they've been reaching out to Israeli mums, Israeli dads. You know, two of the team, they're a married couple and they have children, and they started a ministry to Jewish to Israeli dads. It was a sporting event, and some of these Israeli men that had been attending this event, they known some Muslim dads, and they invited them. And so now there's this wonderful group of guys that meet together. They're all fathers, and some are Israeli Jews and some are Muslims. And our team are getting opportunities. They're having inroads into gospel-centered conversations within playing sports, because they hang out together afterwards, and it's incredible. We're so excited.
I think it's fair to say, Julia, that God is full of surprises, and this story has a long way to roll yet. You've been listening to Julia Pascoe, a missionary with Jews for Jesus, and my thanks to her for sharing her story. The Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund is a Christian charity based in the UK that supports the needs of both Jewish believers and Arab or Palestinian Christians living in Israel and the wider Middle East. If you'd like to know more about our work and receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please visit our website, olivetreefund.org. Meanwhile, join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.